Okay, for adding and subtracting signed fractions, we are reminded to please, please, please leave change opposite, which means to make two marks side by side. So in the first one, we don't need to do that because it's already a plus sign. So we know that we have to find a common denominator. That is the key before we really get going with anything else. We've got to find a common denominator. So in order to do that, we just start with our largest denominator, which is 8, and multiply and see what we get. So if we start off, the first multiple of 8 is 8. 8 times 1 is 8. So we ask ourselves, does the 4 go into 8? Well, yeah, it does. So we've just found our common denominator. And the nice thing about this one is we don't have to change the first one at all. It is already into eighths. Now this one we will. So if we have a denominator of 8, that means that we have multiplied by 2 on the bottom, which means we need to multiply by 2 on the top. And 3 times 2 is 6. So this is what we wind up with. Negative 7 1/8 plus a positive 4 6/8. So now we have to figure out, well, what are we doing here? Are we adding or are we subtracting? The signs are different, which means we find the difference, which means we subtract. Now, the way that it's written here, if we're going to subtract, we're going to have to borrow, because what we're going to be really doing is taking 7 1/8 and subtracting 4 6/8. We don't have enough eighths to do that. So this is when I think it's helpful to change it into improper fractions. So if we do that, the first improper fraction, remember we don't really worry about the sign until the very end. So 7 times 8 is 56 plus 1 is 57. So this is 57 eighths. And of course it's now negative. We can't forget that. And for this one here, 4 times 8 is 32. Plus 6 is 38. So this would be 38 eighths. And so when we put these together, we know our denominator stays the same, and it's just now a matter of remembering how we do this. This is a negative 57. This is a positive 38. The signs are different. We subtract them. So we will subtract 57 minus 38. We'll need to borrow, of course. And we're going to figure that answer out. Whatever answer that is your numerator. And you got to remember which one is going to win the battle, the negative 57 or the positive 38. All right, I'll leave you to figure out that last step. For B, we need a common denominator. So this time we start off with 8 again. 8 times 1 is 8. But unfortunately this time 6 does not go into 8. It's not like the 4. So we've got to keep going. Well, 8 times 2 is 16. Still doesn't work. 6 doesn't go into 16. 8 times 3 is 24, and ding, 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 we've got a winner. So our common denominator for both of these is going to be 24. Okay, in order to get this changed, we multiplied by 4 on the bottom. 6 times 4 is 24. So we do the same thing on the top. 1 times 4 is 4. Here we multiplied by 3 on the bottom because 8 times 3 is 24, so we do multiply by 3 this time and we get 21. And we still have our 6. And now let's go ahead and leave, and I'm going to actually change the color here. Change opposite. So now let's look and see what we've got here. We've got a positive and we've got a negative. So again, we're going to wind up subtracting. How do we subtract numbers? Well, we really basically take the bigger number, subtract the smaller number, and then we figure out what sign it's going to be. So this really, if you want to think about it kind of in logical order, this is really like saying 6 and 21/24 minus 4/24. Right? We're finding the difference between them, which means subtraction. And then at the very end, we're going to ask ourselves, okay, which one wins the battle? So if you write it in this order, it might look a little bit easier to solve here. You can change them into improper fractions, no problem. But you don't really need to, because in this case, we've got enough to subtract. The last time we didn't. We were going to have to borrow and deal with all that junk. But here we do. We have 21/24 minus 4/24. So that might be the easier way to go. If you want to change them into improper fractions, that's totally fine. So I'm going to put a little or here, and then this might help you figure out where you went wrong. This still, of course, stays at 4/24. When we change this, 6 times 24 is 144. And then we got to add on the numerator. And so we actually get 165. So that would be a minus or negative 165/24. And we are leave change opposite. So we are now going to put these together. So either way, you should get the right answer. You could do it in mixed number form or improper fraction form. But the important thing to remember at the very end is the sign.